For billions of years, things have been arranging in patterns. Everything as we know it is filtered through a human lens. You can appreciate patterns for the way they appear to you. It's also useful to define systems of understanding common occurrences to predict the way they work. Any way of looking at them that you can come up with would probably not be the definitive way, since something else might end up being more accurate as a model. I guess math is an exception, but you could always write math using different symbols. Our symbols just make it easier for people to understand. You can see how generally accepted systems of understanding have changed through hundreds of years of prediction and revision of scientific theories. Sorry, I can't see my paper. So phenomena are characterized by the way we understand them. For at least tens of thousands of years, people have been thinking about and making patterns. Art is full of them. Humans have a really strong ability to make connections. Language is part of this natural ability. Hopefully you can automatically sense when something doesn't sound right thanks to your feeling for the syntax of your spoken language or languages. We have linguistics, the study of language, its rules, and the way it changes, from noticing that there is a logic to languages. Many structures of language, even unrelated ones, are universal in a way. Grammar can be correct or incorrect for an individual, since grammar was a natural sense before it was ever standardized. Actually, change in language over time is how new ones evolve. Languages change to become unintelligible from their previous forms, and languages that are related are descended from the same languages. There are a lot of writing systems that I think are much cooler than the Latin alphabet. This is the Latin alphabet. Even though our alphabet makes a lot of sense for English. English has many words from many different sources, like Greek and Latin and Old Germanic. Here's some examples. The way English speakers use the alphabet to spell gives some contextual hints to the origin and meaning of a word, rather than purely relying on the way it sounds. Alphabets, which also include Greek and Cyrillic, have letters that represent just single phonemes, or letters that can be combined to represent a single sound, at least in English. Like G and H in cough, for example, makes an F sound. You can directly relate letters that make the same sound in different alphabets, so words can often be directly transliterated from one alphabet to another, but that doesn't mean that it'll keep the same amount of characters. Cyrillic has a single letter for the SH sound in English. Alphabets are my favorite because they're deceptively simple. English has so many exceptions for its spelling rules, due in part because its alphabet isn't totally phonetic. So not all words are spelled the way they sound. So here's some other writing systems that you may or may not know about. Abjads are another similar way of writing, but in abjads, vowels are omitted, so you are left to guess what they might be. That might seem a bit difficult, but it should be easy to guess what this says. It should be even more intuitive in a language that uses an abjad as its writing system, because the speakers would get lots of practice. The language would have tuned itself to the abjad, or the abjad would have tuned itself to the language. So one example is the Hebrew script. Also Arabic is an abjad. So syllabaries, I think, are also really cool. The idea of syllabaries is neat. Each character represents a syllable. They make sense for languages in which there are rules for what a single sound is allowed to be. For example, K can't exist without a vowel in Japanese. Conveniently, a letter for K doesn't even exist, so it has to be ka, ki, ku, ke, ko. Consonants cannot be written beside each other, in general. They have to be padded with a vowel. Hawaiian has the same rule when it's spoken, but it's written with the Latin alphabet, so the writing system doesn't necessarily have to be perfectly tuned to the way the language actually works. Some writing systems function like syllabaries, but are almost endless, like the Yi script. There are over 1,000 characters that describe individual syllables, since they cover every possible combination of consonant, vowel, and tone in each one. Inuktitut, well, this isn't only used for Inuktitut, but one of the most common languages you might see representing this alphabet, well, not alphabet, it's a syllabary, is Inuktitut. So it has characters that allow a syllable to be closed off with another consonant. The ones furthest on the right go directly after the ones in the 3 rows on the left, and like If you combined I and H, you see at the top left and the top right, that would just be it, I guess. So, yeah, that's pretty cool. It can be broken down and understood in that way. Korean also uses smaller components to build syllable characters. And this kind of writing is my favorite because it's often very modular and satisfying. Many languages are pictographic and convey meaning by showing what it actually is, or at least they did originally. It's possible to turn anything into a script if you try hard enough. Braille is supposed to be a touch-based, not a visual-based writing system. What about a taste-based writing system? What if oranges meant A? Or I guess it would actually be O. Encoding with symbolism and coming up with new writing systems can be a fun mental challenge. And you can come up with silly ones like colors that represent sounds, or glyphs made of patterns that radiate out from the center of a circle. Glyphs could even represent something else if you want to encode something that isn't directly human language. There are lots of things that are like human language, like coding languages. Even high-level programming languages usually imitate human language to make it easy for a person to write and understand them. In a way, it doesn't represent sound, though you can interpret the meaning of the code via the human language that it comes from. Not all coding languages are based on English, but most of them are, and they're decidedly the most international and widely used ones. That's kind of interesting and weird. Learning about patterns and using them to solve problems, as well as creating and solving puzzles, has helped me learn how to systemize my world and my art. Although it sounds like something that would be built up from scratch, learning new concepts in math and linguistics feels more like sinking deeper and deeper into the implications of concepts I've learned in the past. And there's my art, since I guess this is actually an art talk. There is less conscious decision to my paintings and drawings than there seems to be, and whenever anyone asks me a question loaded with expectations of a masterfully crafted idea, I can't actually give a genuine response without disappointing them, since I throw away most of the strings I tie together. My art comes in clear categories, and I have a system of making each type of thing that I fall back on, knowing that I will use the subject matter that's floating around in my head at the moment, making the actual process just like walking or thinking. It's relaxing, and depending on the type of thing I'm working on, can involve some problem solving. However, I return to art again and again because it helps me discern what around me is really important. As a way to explain why I make art, since I've run into a lot of situations where I've had to, I've said that it's like making an expansive world or universe, especially since I like trying to scale ideas up and down. Right now, though, I think I want it to be cozier, like my art is my room or my lab or something. It's a way to keep track of my thoughts, decompress, and challenge myself all in one. Thank you. That's it.